Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you today. As Mark said earlier, we got a beautiful spring morning, and it's great to be able to be together to study from the Word of God. On Sunday mornings, we're studying a series of lessons called, Am I My Brother's Keeper? And of course, the obvious answer to that question is yes, I am definitely my brother's keeper. There's no doubt about that. So what we're doing is we're talking about different responsibilities that we have toward one another. And that's always important reminder that we need to maintain our relationships in the body of Christ. And the lesson we're studying tonight, or this morning rather, is number 5. If you don't have a study guide, don't worry. We'll be talking about different passages of Scripture, and you can just follow along in the Scriptures. But this lesson is about being benevolent toward my brother. And benevolence, of course, suggests the idea of attending to physical needs in particular. We have lots of responsibilities to one another, but one of them, and I think a really important one, is that we see to one another's physical needs as they arise, whatever might occasion that sort of thing. And it's a really important responsibility that we have. The Scriptures talk a lot about it. The importance of caring for the needy was stressed in the Old Testament under the law of Moses. There were specific ordinances and commands and instructions about making sure the needy had their requirements met. In the New Testament, there's a good bit of information about it and instruction about it in the New Testament. That's where we're going to be focusing this morning. But I think our first observation is this is an important thing that not to be overlooked. We live in a very prosperous time. We are materially well-blessed people. And I think also in the day and age in which we live in a time when there's a lot of governmental, what they call them social safety net kind of things, where needy people can receive assistance in those ways. And so I think there's the danger that we sort of blot that out of our mind, or the responsibility that we have, or the need that we should be involved in benevolence doesn't seem as pressing to us. So I think reminders about it are really important. All right, so we start out, question 1 asks us to look at Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. Galatians 6, verse 10 says, As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially to them who are of the household of faith. So the question asked was, and we won't take time to tear this whole text apart, but this actually has been a battleground text through the decades between brethren who think the church should be involved in unlimited benevolence, and between those of us who think that the church's role in benevolence is limited in regards to needy saints. This text is talking to us as individuals, not talking to congregations, but as individuals. And I think that's the way the question is worded. Is my personal benevolence to be limited to helping other Christians? No. Let us do good unto all men. But there's a priority to those who are of the household of faith. We've talked many times about the word opportunity. So when do I have an opportunity to help? Well, first of all, the need has to exist. If there's no need, there's no opportunity. Secondly, though, I have to be in a position or have an ability to be able to help. Maybe I'm flat broke too. So here I got a needy brother. That part is met, but I'm equally broke as he is. Therefore, I don't have any ability to help him, so there's no opportunity to do anything in that case. But if the need exists and I have ability to address the need, therein exists an opportunity for me to act, and I should be acting. So again, it's not limited just to brethren. There should be a preference. If obviously I can't help everybody. Jesus said, "You have the needy with you always." That's the problem of poverty is never going to go away in the world. So obviously I can't help everybody who has need, but I can help some. And in a situation where a brother is in need, he ought to receive my special attention, although I'm not going to limit my focus just to brethren. If there's others in my community, or maybe others. Kind of an interesting thing that exists now is that we have quick communication worldwide, and so we may find out about a need in a foreign country. And occasionally those kind of things come up. I mean, frequently those kind of things come up, and maybe I have a chance to address that. But there are opportunities. We need to look for the opportunities and be a benevolently minded people. Tom?
Sometimes we look at opportunities and we think, financial. Sometimes there's not always financial situations. You look at the situation where Jesus is there preaching in the synagogue, and those individuals brought the paraplegic through, and they actually went to the point of cutting a hole in the roof and letting him down. They knew he needed to eat. They knew what the trouble. They weren't able to heal him, but they knew who he was, and they made the opportunity. They took their time to put, them in a situation where they could get the help. Sometimes that's, we overlook even that opportunity of getting.
Okay, I don't have any money, but I do have an old car that runs a little bit, and I could maybe carry someone to the doctor or do something else. I think it's a good point. Benevolence doesn't necessarily have to be in hard, cold cash. It might be in other things that I can do to assist the needy. And we need to be mindful of the needy. Good point. All right. Question 2 takes us to the early Christians in Acts 2 and Acts 4. Look at Acts 2:44. Acts 2:44. The church had just begun in Jerusalem, and verse 44 says, all that believed were together and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all men as every man had need. Skip over to chapter 4. In chapter 4 at verse 32, the multitude of them that believed were of one heart and one soul. Neither said any of them that aught of the things which he possessed was his own, but they had all things common. Verse 34, neither was there any among them that lacked, for as many as were possessors of lands or houses sold them, and brought the prices of things that were sold, and laid them down at the apostles' feet, and distribution was made to every man according as he had need. I tell you, the open-hearted generosity of those brethren is incredible when you think about it. And it goes off the scale to anything that we've ever considered. Did you ever consider that you would need to sell your house or your property so that you could have money to give to a needy brother? Oh wow, we've never faced that sort of a situation, but that's the kind of generosity they had. Now we might comment here about this, because if you just read that, if that's all that you ever read about how these brethren related to one another, you could easily come away with the conclusion they were living in a commune. This was communal living. Maybe we should all just sell everything we've got and put it in a common fund so it can be distributed as needed, but we don't own anything. Christians shouldn't own any private property, and we should all just live communally. I think you could reach that conclusion if that was all the information there was, but we know elsewhere that the scriptures talk of those who had their own houses. It talked about Christians who were wealthy individuals. And so just to head off the idea that we are instructed in every case to live communally, that's not true. But in a dire circumstance, this would set an example. There shouldn't be anything we'd be unwilling to do in order to help brethren if there was a need that great. We've never faced a need that great, but if there was, we should not be unwilling to do what they did. Tom?
You look at it, it might sound okay, but then there's other situations. You have to look at that concept that says, well, okay, if they sold their place, does that put them in a situation of need as well? Not having a place to live now that they sold it. They were taking and not just giving a portion of it. The indication was that they gave it all. We have an example where one that sold what extra they had, and later on, and said that they gave it all and they did. And then we have the act over in where Paul's writing instructions to the church about taking care of people. That even in Thessalonians is don't just sell everything and go around as a busybody. If you don't work, you don't eat. There's a lot of things that we bring in there to show that situation was us. And then what were the circumstances of that? Here you had a lot of people that come in to Jerusalem from various other places and had stayed because of their conversion and things, because that you can go home or whatever. And there was a place for housing, food, normal various secures just to carry on about it. So you have to look at the whole picture.
It was a unique circumstance that brought this need. But I think the emphasis really, though, is in the open-hearted generosity of the brethren in such a situation. As I said, we've never known a situation anywhere even close to that. I mean, it's almost hard to imagine. But the unlimited willingness of these brethren to help is incredible. But as we said earlier, for instance, there's one passage that comes to mind is 1 Timothy 6, verse 17. Paul tells Timothy, "Charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God who giveth us richly all things to enjoy, that they do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to distribute, willing to communicate or share." And so there would be one place where we go to show that it was never a universal requirement for Christians to dispose of all their personal assets and contribute them. Communal living, although it appears that that's close to what they were doing there initially, was not something that was universal among Christians under the guidance of the apostles. Monty?
When I read this in verse 31, it talks about possessions of lands or houses. It gives the impression that it was people that were wealthy people, like houses, plural. I've got 3 or 4 houses here, maybe rent them out. I'm going to sell this and give to the needy, or I've got a bunch of land, I'll sell this parcel over here. I don't get the impression they were selling the house or property that they actually lived on personally, because as Tom said, then they're in the same boat. They're destitute, don't have anything. So, but I get the impression this was talking about wealthier people that had an abundance and they were sharing that abundance.
Okay, all right. Other thoughts, Wade?
My version says in verse 30, Acts 4:32, and the congregation of those who believed were one-hearted soul, and not one of them claimed that anything belonged to him was his own, but all things were common property to them.
So I think that sort of describes their attitude toward this. That if it's mine and you need it, then it's yours too. I mean, I think that's that incredibly open-hearted generosity that they possess toward one another. I think you're right. All right. Now, immediately on the heels of this, or in the same context of this, of course, question 3 asks us to go to the next chapter, verse 5, and you got the issue with Ananias and Sapphira. Chapter 5, verse 1 of Acts, a certain man named Ananias and Sapphira, his wife, sold a possession. Notice it doesn't say they sold everything, but they sold a possession and kept back part of the price, the wife also being privy to it, and brought a certain part and laid it at the apostles' feet. But Peter said, Ananias, why hath Satan filled thine heart to lie to the Holy Ghost to keep back part of the price of the land? Whilst it remained, was it not thine own? And after it was sold, was it not in thine own power? Why hast thou conceived this thing in thine heart? Thou hast not lied unto men, but unto God. And Ananias, hearing these words, fell down and gave up the ghost, and great fear came upon all them. Then notice verse 7, it was about the space of 3 hours after, when his wife, not knowing what was done, came in, and Peter answered unto her, Tell me whether ye sold the land for so much. And she said, Yea, for so much. And then, of course, she was struck dead too. So you get the idea there, that especially the clarification that Sapphira offers is that they were saying, well, we sold this piece of land, we got $1,000 for it. Here's the $1,000. When the reality of it was maybe they got $5,000 for it. So it wasn't, but what's key here, and the question asked, question 4, this was a voluntary thing. This was not mandated. It wasn't. This would go to what we were saying earlier. They weren't required to do this at all. It certainly wasn't a mandated communal living, because Peter says specifically in verse 4, while it remained, was it not your own? It was yours. After it's sold, was it not in your own power? No, you didn't have to sell it. And after you sold and got money for it, the money was yours. The problem was you have lied, not unto men, but unto the Holy Ghost. And the lie was specifically, as clarified with Sapphira, tell me whether you sold the land for so much. She said, yea, for so much. So they were, that helps a little bit with our understanding. This was not requirement. It wasn't enforced communal living. But even then, they weren't. They were of free will and voluntarily. They didn't have to sell their property after they sold it. They didn't have to give all of the money that they got for the property if they didn't want to. It was all voluntary. And the big issue, of course, was the lie that they told. The question asked, what was the problem there? What was the specific sin of Ananias and Sapphira? What might have motivated? We know the sin was lying, but what might have motivated that? Wade?
I wonder if it's pride.
Okay. Pride, I think, especially in the sense of, I want you to look up to me. I want you to think I'm wonderful. I want you to think, man, look at that guy. Look at, he sold that thing and just contributed. I'd like to get your praise, but man, I hate to get rid of all the money too, you know. I'd like to hang on to the money. So pride coupled with greed, I suppose, is coming to play there. Tom?
Just right before that closing verses of chapter 4, you had that example of Barnabas, that he had a parcel of land, and he sold it to Cain and laid it at Apostles' feet. Evidently, Ananias and Sapphira saw that as well. And, you know, here's Barnabas was, you know, he was one that always was encouraging and uplifting. And, well, this will make people think that I'm sort of like Barnabas.
Yeah. They sure like that. They sure do brag about Barnabas. I'd like to get a little of that bragging. So, you know, I think you're right. Wade?
I guess I feel like if it was more greed, then why they didn't give the money to the church at all?
Yeah.
I mean, they could have sold the property for $5,000 and not give anything.
Yeah, right.
You know, I think it was more just like you said. I want people to see that I have given, and I have done my part. I have sold the piece of property, and I have given. So I want everybody to see that. To me, that's more of a pride issue.
And I think you're right. And there's a big danger about that. And Jesus warned about that. You remember in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6 verse 1, take heed that you do not your alms. Alms were benevolent gifts. Make sure that when you do your benevolent gifts before men, that you do not your alms or benevolent gifts before men to be seen of them. Otherwise you have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Therefore, when thou doest thine alms, do not sound a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say to you, they have their reward. But when you do alms, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth, that thine alms may be in secret, that thy Father which seeth in secret himself shall reward thee openly. I think that, and again, it's this idea, I want to receive the praise of men. And so, if I do something, I want to make sure everybody knows that I did this. I want to report it widely so that everybody knows that I did this good thing. Well, Jesus specifically warned against that, and that shows a wrong heart in the whole matter. I won't ask for a show of hands, but my guess is that there are a lot of us here this morning who have known situations where someone did that very thing. They had done a good deed, but they were very sort of obvious in dropping hints that they had done this good thing. Well, you don't have to tell anybody else. Nobody else needs to know. God knows. It's not going to escape His knowledge that you did this benevolent act. Good for you, and you will receive your praise of God. And if other people find out about it, they can praise you too, but you should not be advertising that. That's not what it's about, right? Tom?
You know, two examples that Jesus gave that, you know, in his personal observed observations of things. One was at the temple when people were coming to give, and Pharisees and those came in and sort of gathered around to give. There was this widow that sort of walked up, put her mite in, and, you know, did all that she had. And he talked about the attitude. And then you have the rich young ruler that wanted to follow Jesus, but, you know, when Jesus told him what he could do, because he knew his heart, you know, he refused to do it. So you have those two attitudes that are in there that come into play here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. All right. So the sad case. Did Jake? Do you have a thought?
Well, one thing, and maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but you know, verse 4, while remain was it not your own after his soul was not known of power. I think that shows that there's some judgment in situations like this as to how I should be involved and if I should be involved. I guess
And your judgment might be different than mine.
we just need to be careful about it.
Yeah.
Our decision.
Yeah.
Well, why are other people helping with this? Well, that's their decision. We shouldn't even.
So here's this particular brother. And your judgment is that I think I should help him. My judgment might be, I'm not sure that that's the best thing for me to help him.
Not be in a position with it. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
It's in my power.
yeah.
And we'll all give account, so we need to be careful.
I think a good point. Good point. Dale?
If they would have said, we sold this, and we wanted to give part of it, then it would probably been okay.
It would have been.
They let on like they give, just like others.
Yeah. They wanted the praise, no doubt about it. You're exactly right. All right, let's go to Matthew 25. Question 5 comes from Matthew 25, and it's a longer text. So I just want to we're going to jump through this section. We'll just read a few of the verses. Matthew 25, beginning at verse 31. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. Before him all nations shall be gathered. We're talking about a judgment scene, right? And he's going to separate, verse 33, the sheep from the goats. And he's going to praise some. Verse 34, come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungered, and ye gave me meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in. Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me. I was in prison, and ye came unto me. And the righteous are going to be kind of surprised. When did we ever see you in that kind of situation? And Jesus is going to say, verse 40, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you've done it to one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me. Wouldn't we like to be in that category? In other words, you get the idea, these people didn't even expect to be praised by anyone for what they had done. It's just almost like they understood this was something you do. This is what you do. I won't name the person, but there's a person here in this congregation that I have discovered over the years to be a very generous and benevolent person. And an expression was offered, they're just some people you have to help. And that, in other words, it wasn't like, I feel like I have this burden. I feel like I'm so obligated. I've got to help. No, there's just some people who need help. And that's the way we need to be. And these, you get the idea from these people that Jesus describes in the judgment scene. They kind of surprised you. You mean, we didn't see you in that condition, Jesus? No, but you saw my brethren in that condition and you helped them. And it's like you were helping me. But then, of course, he turns the table. In verse 41, he shall say to them on the left hand, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. Why? For I was hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in. Naked, and ye clothed me not. Sick, and in prison, ye visited me not. And they shall also answer, saying, Lord, when saw we thee in such a condition? And he said, verily I say to you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me. So, again, I mean, it's just a perfect opposite side of the coin. Well, if we had seen you in that shape, Jesus, we would have jumped to it, man. We would have been there in a heartbeat if we ever saw you in that shape. He said, yeah, but when you didn't do it to your brethren, to my brethren, it's like you didn't do it to me. So my big takeaway from that very familiar judgment scene picture is that there's a clear expectation that we as the disciples of the Lord will be involved in this kind of work. It's not, you don't get the idea that this is, oh well, yeah, if you choose to, it's optional. It seems to me that the Lord has a strong expectation on us that we should be thus involved. And that's why I think, because of the conditions in which we live of prosperity and government assistance to the needy, and we don't have to dirty our hands helping needy people, that maybe we just let this we definitely let this get back on the way back burner. This is not forefront in our mind. I think we need to do more, be more benevolently minded. This text surely teaches such an expectation on us. Dale?
Maybe he wants us to seek to help someone rather than them to come and ask for it.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the first part.
I say, maybe he wants us to seek
Oh, yeah.
those that we can help rather than them to come
And I do think that this involves me knowing my brother. If I don't have any established relationship with him, he may be starving to death and I'm not even perceptive to it. And so I do need to know him. I think you're right. Other thoughts, Tom?
He does go and put some clarifiers in there with, the brother. The Jews had a problem, with, they had a sort of a class system that, in their societies, as we do in this country as well. The rich sort of look down on the poor and vice versa and different things like that. So he was telling them that, they're within your brothers, there are people that help. And even Jesus went about doing a lot of that. But when he went up into the area of Tyre and Sidon and, the lady up there that, he commended her because of her faith, but talked about, eating the
Crumbs from the table.
From the table. Even Jesus recognized that even there's poor that need our help as well.
Right. Okay, question 6. Now, this may get to the heart of our thinking. Question 6, what are some of the excuses one might offer for not helping a brother in need? What do you think there? Well, so, I don't really want to do this, I'm telling you. I kind of like to hang on to my money. I can't deny the passages that we've already looked at, but I'd like to be kind of hanging on to my money. So what kind of excuses might I generate in my own mind to excuse myself from such responsibility? Monty?
One of the first ones that comes to mind is, well, I didn't know they needed help. Which gets back to the point that I'm not really being the brother that I should be to them, or I would have realized there was something going on they needed.
Okay. So plead ignorance, which is in itself exposes and condemns you. Okay. Anybody else? Wade?
Scripture says that if a man won't work, he shall eat. So, I guess every situation is different. But sometimes you feel like that if this brother is just depending on me or depending on others and not trying to do for himself, then that may be a cause as well.
Okay, I think you're right, and we're going to talk about that verse next, so hang on to some of those thoughts. But I do think I could use it as an excuse. Well, he's lazy. He's personally negligent. He's not trying. And it might be true, and if that's true, then this 2 Thessalonians 3 verse 10 is going to factor into that decision. But I need to be careful not to use that as an excuse in every case. Every needy person is needy because they're lazy. Well, that's not true, right? But if I offer that excuse, the reason because I'm going to tell you, and I've been guilty of this kind of thinking. If he wants a job, there's jobs to be had. Let him get a job, right? We got to be careful in assuming that every needy person is needy because of his own negligence. That's not true, but I do think that we use that as an excuse. Jacob?
Well, sort of closely related to that is they're needy because they made bad decisions. They should have chosen a different career, or they should have done something different with their money.
Well, what do you think? So how should I react to that? In other words, I'm using an excuse.
As an excuse.
So 20 years ago, he should have made a better choice.
You should have known 6 months ago that if you quit that job, you wouldn't be able to find another one right away or something.
Yeah.
So, maybe there's some of that, but most people are, a lot of people are needy because they make bad decisions. I know that's
Yeah. So you're going to let me starve to death because I made a bad choice 20 years ago in my career path. No, that I agree. That we could use that as an excuse. Monty?
Well, they made their bed, now they got to sleep in.
Yeah.
They chose to be that way, so that's the way they are.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we don't help others like we should, just like Jesus condemned the Pharisees, because they said, well, I'd like to help my parents, but I already dedicated this money to God, so it's really not available to do for them. And while we don't necessarily do the same things as far as saying, well, it's dedicated to God, well, I've done got that amount of money set aside for my retirement program, or I've got it set aside for this, or whatever thing we think we got to have money set aside for, so I can't take the money and help them. So we'll make excuses because it's going to be inconvenient for them.
Yeah. All right, now let's take the other side of that. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 10. 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 10, you know it well. You likely can recite it from heart. For even when we were with you this, we commanded you that if any would not work, neither should he eat. Well, that's a biblical principle, right? And the biblical principle is an expectation that I do for myself what I'm able to do. And if I'm unwilling to do for myself what I'm willing to do, then I'll have to bear that. That is a biblical principle. So now what we've got here is we got two things to consider. His need, but would I, and the follow-up question there is, would I be doing harm to aid him if he's not willing to help himself, if he's unworthy? Am I doing harm? So here's a guy, and he could work, and he has abilities, and he's got skills, but he just lays up and he won't work. Well, he doesn't have anything to eat. And here's a good place to pray for wisdom and judgment. Am I seeing the full picture? Is it in fact a case of just purely old laziness? He's just lazy. Or is there something else going on here? And it may not be it may not be real obvious at first view. But if I get involved in this situation, I may realize there's some other factors playing out. But I got to make this call because there is clearly a situation where if he won't work, I shouldn't help him. But on the other hand, if he's genuinely needy, I should help him. And so I got to make a call. And I think this goes back to what Jacob said earlier. My judgment in regards to that particular individual might be different than your judgment about that individual. We're going to have to accommodate one another in that way. Some cases are far more obvious than others. But we're called upon, as we are often called upon, to make judgments about how to proceed. And in this matter, we got to make that call. Tom?
Sometimes there's that situation where it's not just the individual. He might have a family, and because of his situation, the whole family we neglect, we don't give any help to him, but we neglect the family also. So we need to sort of look beyond that one situation.
But I got to tell you, because I've been in cases like that, you got to be careful. And there's different ways to help people.
Right.
So if I just lay out cash, that guy's going to take that cash and go buy alcohol. He's going to go get drunk on the cash. So I wouldn't be helping the situation at all if I just threw cash at it. Maybe what I do is take his wife and kids and go buy them some clothes or go buy them some groceries. And so again, judgment would come into that, because I don't want to aid and abet sin, but I want to help genuine need, and so on. Well, that's where this thing comes to a clash point. Dale.
Sometimes we may pass judgment on somebody too quick. Maybe they need some help. Like say, maybe we don't give them a handout. Maybe we can help them get a job.
Yeah. There's lots of ways to help. I think you're right. Now, the follow-up question to that was question 8. Could I harm a brother by helping him when he's not worthy? Well, I think we would say, yeah, that's possible, right? I may be enabling that sort of sinful conduct. Maybe he needs to bear the consequence of his choice, and then that motivate him to do different. Lots of judgment there, lots of judgment. But would you agree with me that what I would rather be, because there's judgment, so I could err going either way. Would you agree with me that it'd be preferable to err on the side of generosity than to err on the side of stinginess? So I'm not sure, but I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt here and go with generosity in this case. That sort of thing. To me, as I said, some cases are just clear cut. I mean, you can see it from a mile away. Others are much harder to figure out. Monty?
Our attitude needs to be that we're looking for ways to help others, and we're going to take advantage of the opportunities we have to help them. And there may be some judgment involved in how's the best way to help them, but we're going to try to make that judgment and help where we can.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
we're looking for ways to help, not ways to get out of it.
Yeah, wait.
I always feel like that if I'm generous God would be, His blessings would be upon me. Now, it may not be monetary blessings, it may be some other blessings. But, being blessed by God is a good thing.
Yeah.
A good thing to cherish. And so, in my frame of mind, if I can be benevolent, then God's going to look good upon me.
Yeah. And I think we need to be inclined that way. But still understanding the other side, too, that we can do harm, by throwing money at a situation I know, for instance, that when we get requests from brethren overseas where there's a need, it seems like so often we get requests for help from the Philippines, and we've sent help to the Philippines. I know different ones of you have as well. And that's good. I mean, we need to be mindful of brethren on the far other side of the world. But understand that we can hurt the situation as well as help it. For instance, let's say we get a request from a preacher in the Philippines who's in need. Oh yeah, he seems like a really good guy. We should help him. And so we send him $1,000 a month, having not investigated that the average salary of a working man in the Philippines is $200 a month. And so now we have placed him under the temptation of this 5 times normal income. What kind of temptations do you think that you'd face if suddenly your income ballooned 5 times what you have been? So whatever you're making now, multiply that by 5 and say, you think you'd face any new temptations if you had that much money? Yeah, probably. And so, again, good discretion is, and you can, it's not out of the question. You can do harm by throwing money at a situation without discretion. Tom?
Timothy, was talking about the care of widows, and also puts a situation there. If you do not care for your own family, you're worse than them.
Right.
So there's some disciplinary action that comes in. If we have, an individual among us
Yeah.
that is not working, there's a situation there that it needs to be addressed somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
To the point where, he or she, or whatever, becomes aware that they're not fulfilling their obligations that the Lord would have them do anyway.
Yeah.
And many times it gets into that situation as well, is we ignore that aspect of it, and we try to do the benevolent side of it, and we're not really correcting it.
And the more you think about it, you realize there's many facets to this question. Real quickly, question 9. We help a brother most when we help him to help himself. Do you agree with that statement? I think a sort of way of expressing it we've heard before. You can give a man a fish, or you can teach a man how to fish. Which would be better? Give him a fish. If you give him a fish, he's full today. If you teach him how to fish, he can provide for himself in an ongoing way. I think there's a valuable notion there. But we shouldn't use that as an excuse not to give him a fish today either. If he's immediately hungry, I need to feed him. If I can help him learn a trade or get a job or do something so that he can provide for himself, I'd be helping him that way too. But I don't think we should use that as an excuse to say, learn to fish, man. By this time next week, you might catch a fish. I might be dead this time next week. I might starve to death. So I think we can do both. All right. Real quickly, question 10. Many feel that they're not in a financial position to help others. What does Ephesians 4:28 teach concerning this? Remember Ephesians 4:28? Let him that stole, let me read it to you before I misquote it. Ephesians 4:28, let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. So I don't feel like I'm in a financial situation to help others. Well, maybe I need to work to improve my situation. Maybe I need to work harder, try to earn more. Not with the idea of accumulating wealth, but that I can get myself in a position to be able to help other people. That's a worthy thing. It's a worthy thing to be benevolent. Now, I would also point out that the guy who receives that benevolence, he needs to realize that he should be striving to get himself into a situation where he'd be able to help others too. Unfortunately, it is often the case that the benevolent recipient continually stays in that recipient category. And sometimes it's inescapable. I mean, maybe he's got physical impairments or other reasons why he can't work and can't earn for himself. You know, so it may be the case that he's all. But if I'm such a person that I could work and better myself, so that I now don't have to be the recipient, but I could be the giver, that'd be even better. So all of us need to say, I want to. I'll tell you another place is. So I'm going to buy a bigger house and a newer car and go on more luxurious vacations. Well, there's a benevolent need here. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't help. Well, maybe what I need to do then is go on lesser vacations, buy a lesser car, have a smaller house, so that I can be benevolent. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of ways that would apply. What Paul is actually saying there is, put yourself in a position where you can be able to help others by the choices that you make. And then real quickly, last question, 1 John 3. This is question 11. 1 John 3, verse 17, 18. 1 John 3, 17. Whoso hath this world's goods, that's me, that's you. Whoso hath this world's goods, and seeth his brother have need, and shutteth up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. That describes a situation that we could be in, right? We are those who have this world's good. And there are situations where we have brethren in need, and we should not. I think it's really interesting, the expression, do not shut up your bowels of compassion in a situation like that. We should be compassionate. We should be open and generous. And so can you improve in that? So our lesson this morning has been about being benevolent toward our brethren. Can you do better? Yes, you can do better. I can do better. We can always do better, right? And we just need to pray about that and try to put into practice the principles of a benevolent, generous heart. Dale? Yeah. There's a lot of ways to help. There's a lot of ways to help, and we need to be looking for them. Thanks, everybody. Good comments.